any rate, parental involvement is at an all-time high. Couple that with what's going on with SEL, CRT, and COVID-19, and what you've got is this kind of perfect storm or recipe for parents to raise the alarm bell, cause of concern. Hey, we ought to look at alternatives. And that, I would say, again, I want to echo this, is the ultimate check that parents have on a school system. You can attend school board meetings, absolutely fine. I agree with that 100%. Keep school boards honest. You can write letters to administrators, absolutely fine. You can demand meetings. You can communicate with teachers. All that's absolutely fine, right? But all along the way, if it is not to your satisfaction, if you feel uncomfortable, your ultimate veto power is to withdraw that student from the school. You still have that power. And listen, guys, we cannot take that for granted. Prior to right around the time that COVID started to really sink in, there were a number of academics at a very high level, by the way, who were starting to question the autonomy of parents. And you're going to hear some of that in this educator's response as well. And to even call for a banning on homeschooling, right? Because there are some that see that as dangerous. And that's really the crux. That's the battle here that we're fighting right here and now, is what autonomy and authority do you have as a parent, as a family, versus the school, right? And this is why the absolute solid claim that I make is why issues like SEL, social emotional learning, and CRT, critical race theory, are so important for parents to understand, because educators will try to cloak it as, hey, educating the whole child, we get kids with all this baggage, we've got to, make, something out of nothing, and, all of the different cliches that get used. But here's the problem. You give that little sliver, you open that door just a little bit, and they will take that and they will abuse that power. So what they will initially justify as, a good thing, beneficial to the kid or the kids in general, even those who are in a good spot in their education, that power can be used in a very negative way. And that is what I started to see happening, right? Where it started off as like, hey, we have kids who have issues managing their behaviors, managing their emotions. They get worked up very easily. And when that happens, whereas maybe somebody at this level may get upset but internalize a lot of it, Johnny gets upset and he starts chucking things at the teacher, or starts cursing or harming other students or whatever. So we got to have SEL to teach Johnny how to not go from 0 to 10, but maybe go from 0 to 5, and then acknowledge and recognize where you're, starting to creep up and how to come back down, right? So that was what it was all kind of rooted in, right? And justified as why we need to do this. But then it started to be messaging like, hey, you've got a really bad home life. Tell me a little bit about that. And now all of a sudden the school is playing the role as, mandated reporters to then interject into family affairs. And again, in a known situation where there's abuse and things like that going on, sure, nobody's going to say, oh, we shouldn't be aware of that and we shouldn't act on that, right? But I have personally been told stories where that power it's been an overreach. I'll just say that, right? Where one little thing was misconstrued, or maybe somebody took too many liberties with what they thought was going on, and all of a sudden a call to CPS, and now you've got people knocking at your door, you've got phone calls being made, you've got paperwork being started, and this whole notion of the school supplanting the parent is extremely dangerous, and one thing that we should absolutely be on our guard about. And that is what I got in this exchange here on Facebook in this group that I'm a part of. And so somebody shared this in the parent group, and I started reading it. It was a so-called educator who I don't believe is actually even a teacher anymore. I believe he works for a consulting company now, but claims to have all this experience. And again, I know some information was shared with me, so I don't have the entire background of this, but it was very clear from reading his response to the member of this group that he was trying to school her, for lack of a better term, on what it's like for educators in school. So I want to kind of just break some of this down here and give a rebuttal from somebody who's been in that classroom as well, who has maybe a little bit different perspective. And so he kind of starts this off by, trying to give the impression that schools meet the needs of children no matter where they are. He says your kids go to school and teachers meet their needs whatever they are. So I want to pause right there and say, no, they don't. That's just not a true statement. Now, you can make that claim and you can feel that is the case, because I know one of the things that I call them statists, right, or pro public education advocates will do is that they'll give you this mantra: oh, we have to educate everybody. We have to take everybody. Well, no, you don't. First and foremost, no, you don't. Quit lying. You can reject students who are dangerous to the student body, who are not in a good place to be in the building. So this notion that you have to take every kid is an absolute myth. That doesn't happen. Second, you don't meet the needs of every kid. And I've got data in my book that supports that. I'm not going to go through it all right now. You can look at it yourself. You can go online and you can look at the CDC. You can look at what other clinical psychologists are saying. You can look at test scores. You can look at reading scores and reading levels. There's all kinds of data points out there to show you that you're not meeting the needs of every student, no matter where they're at. You may feel that way, right? But that doesn't mean that is true. So that's first and foremost. He goes on to say, you don't have a say in what your kid needs despite what you think you control. And again, right there, you see and hear that attitude, right? You sense that attitude from this educator, that they are superior to the parent and that they have the answers that parents don't have. And he goes on in a lot of this diatribe that he provides to really rail on, in particular, and you can see his agenda from this, that he's railing on parents who aren't supportive of children who may be showing tendencies of an alternative sex life, right? So those who are gay and lesbian or transgender, I don't know if that was, I don't remember off the top of my head if that particular one, I know he used sexual orientation to say, look, here is somebody who may have inklings that they are gay, and the way in which you as a parent suppress that is dangerous. And then kind of goes on to talk about the role of the school in helping children to be more comfortable with who they are, and how SEL and CRT, and here are the words that he uses, right? CRT and intersectionality, which is kind of a part of that. Bringing different people in society together, right? So like, that's what intersectionality means. He says the reason those are being championed by educators is because educators are on the front line seeing the impact of racism, sexism, and bad parenting each and every day, which of course he doesn't define. He implies what it means, but he can't define what that means, right? But he doesn't, and he doesn't say anything about the role of the school in this as well, right? And that's what I want to kind of point out here. So to this educator, Mr. Burke, surely you know from your time in schools the role that the school plays in harming children. Certainly you can wake up and feel okay with yourself knowing that there are children each and every day who are shuffled off to their local school, who are broken down by bullies inside that school, which, by the way, not only comes from other students, but from educators as well. There's a lot of data out there to suggest that kids receive a tremendous amount of bullying from other educators. And surely you feel okay knowing that you are a part of that system, that you continue to promote a system that does that to children. And certainly you feel okay with putting children into a compulsive system that tells them there are failures, that breaks them down into data points, that tracks them, that crams them into rooms and strips them of their curiosity and their love and desire to want to learn. Surely you're okay with that, right? Because you've told us in this passage how you're so powerful, how you do so much to empower children through SEL curriculum, and how you're this Superman that can take these kids in under your wing and right the ship because of bad parenting and because of bad home lives. Yet you've done absolutely nothing to accept part of the blame that schooling has in wrecking these kids. And surely you feel okay with that. I wouldn't know that because you didn't bring that up in your diatribe that you posted online to a parent who has the autonomy, who has the authority to see what is best for their child. Not you. No educator should ever, ever have the right to look at another child and determine how they should be raised and how they should feel, no matter what situation you think is appropriate. That should never happen. The school should never, ever supplant the family. There are other services in our society, sir, that take care of children who are being abused, who take care of children who are in really bad situations. And I might suggest that if you are that passionate about wanting to help children out who are in those situations, that you might enlist your services into an organization that would be of the benefit to those children. The church being one of those, the Boys and Girls Club being one of those, the YMCA being one of those, and other organizations. The school is not the parent and should never be the parent. We should never promote a situation where we are allowing a government institution to be a de facto parent. That can never happen. Our society is built on the familiar structure. The most sacred institution in our society is the family, no matter how dysfunctional it is. And you are in no position, regardless of your credentials, sir, to tell anybody what their family should and should not do. Just as I, as a straight white Christian male, have no right to tell my neighbor how they should raise their children. I am there to love them and support them. And as an educator, I am there to listen to my students and give them the guidance that I think is right. But I am in no authority to tell somebody else how they should be living their lives. And so for you to come on and attack another person who has the best interest of their children in mind, and to try to make it seem as though you are some enlightened person that is a part of some organization that is charitable and kind and loving, when over 150 years of data suggests that our school system is the most radical experience ever known to any society. The fact that we force compulsive through the point of a gun, right? Quite literally, truancy, cops coming to your home and telling you, where are your children? They need to be in school. That we force children into these schools that absolutely destroy their love of learning, their desire to want to learn, their creativity. You share no responsibility in that. Where is that in your enlightened response here, sir? Surely you're willing to take some of the responsibility for that. I am. I was a part of it, but I woke up to it. I realized what I was doing. I realized what the American schooling system was doing to children, and I wanted no more part of it. And I will tell you, as an educator and as a parent of two children who are both in this school system, that I, as a parent, will always protect and defend my rights over that of an educator any day of the week. Any day of the week. In terms of how I raise my child, the moral and ethical code that I instill in my child, my rights as a parent are paramount to what you think is right. And parents that are listening to this, those of you that are a part of the group that I'm referring to, and those that are catching this online, I hope that you take that responsibility seriously. And I hope that as this school year begins and as you start to awaken more to what is going on inside of our buildings each and every day, that you would do this in the appropriate manner. Again, we have to make sure that we're doing it that way. We have to make sure that we're using dialogue. We have to make sure that we are keeping an open mind. We can't resort to name calling. We can't resort to mudslinging. We can't resort to threats. That stuff's off limits. But that does not dismiss the fact that you have every right to be able to hold teachers and school systems accountable to educating your child the way that you see fit. And if that's not being met, you have that ultimate veto. You have every right to withdraw from that school. And the positive thing with all this, whereas maybe a year or two ago, your options might have been limited in what you could do, they're opening more and more every day. Every single day, there are more and more options that are coming to the forefront to combat parents who feel trapped inside of having to rely on the traditional model for educating their children. And so I would highly encourage you to educate yourself on that. Look at options that are available in your community. It doesn't have to be homeschool. It doesn't even have to be private school. There are many, many other options that are beginning to come to the surface in terms of options and alternatives to educating our children. And there is nothing that I have seen in my time in over a decade in the classroom that I think makes the public school system superior to any other method. It may be unorthodox. It may not be what others think it should look like. Who cares? You know, these people that claim that they have all the answers and that we need to, I hear this all the time. Teachers say, oh, we've got to have an educated citizenry to uphold our democracy. Well, look where we are. Look how long we've had compulsory school. We've got kids who can't read. We've got kids that can't do math. We got kids that can't think critically. We have kids who are panicking out of their mind as they graduate from high school, not knowing what to do, that are being shoveled off to college because now we're telling them, hey, a high school degree or diploma is no longer acceptable. You have to have college. And so there's pressure now for them to go into that avenue, and they're going into thousands of dollars of debt. They're anxious, they're worried, they're frustrated. This school system, this compulsory school system is a major, major part of that. So anything that you can do to remove yourself from that, to strip yourself from that, I think it's a win. So be emboldened, be empowered, educate yourself, prepare yourself as you go into these, not confrontations, maybe they will be, but remember to keep your composure, keep your cool, stay on point. Don't let the emotion build up to where you distract from what the main purpose is. That's easy to do, because when I read that last night, there were a lot of thoughts run through my mind that I wanted to come on here and say, but then I was like, look, stick to the point. Stick to the point, because the facts are there. The truth is there, right? That's the reality of the situation. And I would open challenge any person who is a believer in the public school system, who's a believer in compulsory education, to a debate, to an open exchange of ideas. If you feel so confident in what you are a part of, and you are so vehemently opposed to what I and other parents are engaged in, let's have a debate. Let's talk about this, right? Let's put it out there for everybody to hear, for everybody to see the information and the data. That'll help them maybe make up their mind about what they want to do. But for this individual to attack a parent the way that they did is completely uncalled for. It's that bully mentality that I talked about. And again, guys, you can find all kinds of information out there about what children go through on a daily basis that school is directly, not indirectly, directly accountable to, in terms of what it has done psychologically, emotionally to our children. And it's not, some of it is home life. I get that. But if you discount the role that schools are playing, you're turning a blind eye to it. And that's just not fair. It's just simply not fair to not acknowledge the role that school plays in developing where these children are in life. And I could make the equal claim that we are having to combat what you're doing here at home. That when my kids come home from school, they are bringing home ideas, lifestyles, and other things that we don't agree with. Okay. So I could take your argument and flip it around on you and tell you, justify that. Tell me why putting kids into classrooms of 20 to 25 to 30 kids and moving them around throughout the building throughout the day. Tell me how that's a good idea. Tell me how that invokes the love of learning. Tell me how that helps them to flourish. You can't do it. So again, parents, when you come across this kind of thing, prepare yourself, research, look for the data, look for the information that's out there, because this kind of thing cannot be accepted, both within the profession and within the communities that we're a part of, because this person is a community member. They live somewhere. They're a part of a community. We can't allow this kind of attitude and thinking to win the day. I mean, he's entitled to believe what he wants to believe. Doesn't mean he's right. Doesn't mean he can't have pushback. Doesn't mean there shouldn't be pushback on it. And that's also, too, by the way, pushback is not the same as, being shouted down or bullied or harassed or doxxed or whatever. That's not the same thing. You put yourself out there with these opinions, you're going to have pushback. And that's why I said it's important to stick to being on point so that we don't go down that path of doing the same thing that they are doing. All right. I hope that helped. Again, guys, I would highly encourage you to immerse yourself in data. Look for some of the people that I referenced at the beginning of this video who are influential on me. Of course, there are many, many others out there who are doing fantastic work that I can't even name everyone right now. Ken Danford is one. Blake Bowles is another one. I mentioned Kerry McDonald, read John Taylor Gatto. Dr. Peter Gray out of Boston College is another fantastic read. It talks a lot about the psychology of children and the way that they learn and what schools do. There's many, many others. Just educate yourself. And if I can pass along any information, I'd be more than happy to do that. But prepare yourself, because the battle lines are being drawn. And once schools start up here in the coming weeks, I can definitely see this only intensifying. So please feel free to reach out to me at any time. Thank you guys so much for following along today. I do have my podcast show, if you're interested in catching any of that, entitled They Never Taught Me That. I do that along with a colleague of mine who I used to teach with. We go through content in the social studies and go through the way in which schools teach them. And then we go through the stuff that gets left out, the narratives, the information, and that kind of thing. So it's kind of a lighthearted, fun conversation that we have each week where we help fill in the gaps on that. You can find that channel on Facebook. We have a Facebook page called They Never Taught Me That. The podcast episodes are available on Google and Apple, so you can find both of those there by just searching They Never Taught Me That. And then also run a website called edfailure.com, where you can find previous articles that I've written, copies of my book, the link to the book on Amazon. Failure, the History and Results of America's School System is up there. Probably looking at having Letdown ready by the beginning of 2022. We got about a first draft done, getting through some editing and whatnot on that. So you can be on the lookout for that as well. And again, always looking forward to feedback, comments, suggestions, and things of that nature. So thank you so much. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.